Now, what was it about Harold Shipman, the family man, the healer whose patients liked him, that made him turn to murder? Our correspondent Gavin Hewitt has been looking into the background of Britain's worst serial killer.
In the back row of a school photograph stands Harold Frederick Shipman, aged 5, a confident boy in a bow tie. Fred, as everyone called him, was clever. He lived here in Nottingham. His father was a lorry driver. He got a place at the local grammar school, and in this neighbourhood, that set him apart. Age 17, Fred Shipman's life was to change. His mother, in her early 40s, was dying of cancer. And here he was introduced to the influence of a doctor, administering drugs like morphine to alleviate pain in the last days of her life. An ambitious Shipman went on to study medicine, but there was a complication. A 17-year-old girl called Primrose, who he had recently met, was pregnant. They married quietly, out of town. The certificate describes her as a window dresser. After college, he became a doctor in Todmorden. He was energetic, certain of his ideas, but he began having blackouts. Then the practice here made a shocking discovery. Fred Shipman was addicted to pethidine, a morphine-like drug.
A lot of pethidine had been prescribed, and we didn't know where it had gone.
And what did Dr. Shipman say?
Well, it had gone into him, because he was dependent on it, yes.
So he left town for a drug treatment centre in York, his career damaged. His only explanation was that he had become fascinated with drugs while at college. Sometime later, he re-emerged as a GP in Hyde. His colleagues respected his work, although some felt he could be patronising towards his patients, and his arrogance irritated them.
He had very high opinions and very strong opinions, and he felt that the way in which he practiced medicine was the standard to which all of his colleagues should themselves aspire.
In 1993, he set up on his own. Having fallen out with his partners, he attracted a large number of patients. He was active in the community. Here, staff at his practice was celebrating having won a prize for running a children's asthma clinic.
He's a character, a good character, a nice man, nice, good family man, excellent kids he's got.
That's part of the enigma of the man. He has a close family, his wife Primrose and their 4 children. Only rarely was another side seen, when, for instance, he returned to the house of Winifred Mellor, one of his victims.
I was amazed that he could be so cold, he could be so abrupt, uncaring, insensitive. He wasn't the least bit concerned, either for the fact that Mrs. Mellor had died, or more so for the family.
The police struggled to understand the doctor who lived quietly here. Only in one instance did money appear a motive. His victims were women, and he could be rude and dismissive towards them, but his crimes defy easy answers. Those who examined him settled for this explanation, that he was an ambitious, disappointed man who in some warped way came to enjoy the ultimate power of deciding who would live and who would die. Gavin Hewitt, BBC News.
Well, earlier I spoke to our correspondent John Thorne, who spent the evening talking to the people of Hyde. I asked him to sum up the feelings there tonight.
I think it's very difficult to sum them up. It is a traumatised community, a very silent community now that at last it knows the dreadful truth about Dr. Harold Shipman. It's a place that has had months, almost a year or more, to get used to the idea that somebody within their midst, somebody they thought of as a medical saint almost, has turned out to be a mass murderer. Lots of people here are determined that the community shall survive and will come through at the other end, and that they will make sure that those people, almost everyone here, has somehow been touched by the evil that Dr. Shipman managed to get through, and that therefore the community is getting together to make sure that somehow those people who are bereaved are helped in their bereavement and are somehow led towards a position where they can understand perhaps what happened and come to terms with that and move on with their community life. from everybody from the chief executive to age concern to fellow doctors to all the sort of people that work within the community, there seems to be a determination that Dr. Shipman's career will not be allowed to break down this community that has had to suffer so heavily. And it is really that nobody realized quite who the man was that had come here and set up his surgery on the main street, just really a few hundred yards away, right in the center of that community, and had appeared to everybody through his bedside manner, through the way in which he became involved in that community, as a pillar of Hyde. And now he's turned out to be a Jekyll in their midst, as it were, and somehow this community is insisting that they will come to terms with that.
John Thorne talking to me earlier from Hyde there. Well, we've got some of tomorrow morning's newspapers here, so let's take a look at the front pages. And not surprisingly, all of tomorrow's first editions lead with the conviction of Harold Shipman. The Times, to kick off with, says, Britain's worst serial killer. Harold Shipman is jailed for the rest of his life. The paper devotes 4 inside pages to the story. The Independent quotes the judge, Mr. Justice Forbes, who told Shipman, "Each of your victims was your patient. You murdered each and every one." The paper says the GP had no motive other than the desire to play God. The Guardian carries that close-up picture of Shipman. It asks whether he's in fact responsible for the deaths of 150 of his patients. The Sun has the same picture. It believes there were 141 victims of Britain's worst serial killer. The Mirror labels the GP Dr. Death. It carries comments by the local coroner who suggested that there could be up to 1,000 victims. The Express pushes the death toll even higher. It asks, did he murder 1,500 patients? The paper reports that a further 23 cases are under investigation. And finally, the Mail, the chilling death toll of Dr. Shipman. It suggests that his murder spree spanned more than 3 decades.